Hi, friends, and welcome to Self Meets Soul, a podcast where we discuss how to discover what sets your soul on fire and modern ways to integrate spirituality into your daily life. My name is Juliana, and today I'm going to be wrapping up our year doing a little 2025 recap with some of the lessons that I have learned this year. And these lessons are really things that, maybe they resonate with you, maybe they don't as much, but there's something that I think as a collective can be a really good reminder. The first lesson that I learned this year, and it really did actually kind of make an appearance in January, so kind of right off the bat, is that relationships evolve. I touched on this a little bit in one of my episodes where I talk about how people are like plants and how, just like plants, we are always changing, we're growing, we have parts of us that die off and need to be clipped off, things like that. And while I have always had this realization that relationships do change and they evolve, especially I would say after college when um, a lot of my friends kind of went off to their different paths and I stayed in Arizona and things changed. But what I realized is that adult friendships change as well. I was under the impression, mistakenly, that the biggest kind of relationship evolvement that you'll have is when you leave college because you're entering like the real adult world. And because of this, I thought that any friendships that I really made post college, those would probably be friendships that I had over the long term, just because, yes, we are always changing, but in reality, I figured how much am I going to change between like post college age to mid 30s? Probably not that much. But also keep in mind, I am 27, so I could totally be wrong, and maybe I'll reference this later. But because I had that impression, I was surprised when some of my relationships changed at the beginning of this year. It was a little hard to deal with at first because I was just surprised by it. It was things that kind of just took me by surprise, and again, I was under the impression that this wouldn't really be something that happened to me. And something that I talk to a lot with one of my good friends and also my therapist is that relationships that you have in your life are part of these circles. And there's, this inner circle. And then as you keep going out, there's other rings around this inner circle, per se. And that really is what is going to change for you. Those are the relationships that will evolve over time. It doesn't always necessarily mean that you have a relationship with someone and then suddenly they're gone. They may just move from the inner circle to one of the more outer circles. And when I am talking about these circles, I'm basically referring to the people in your life that you see more often, the people in your life that maybe you don't see them as often, but you're close with. You keep in regular communication with them. That close friendship or whatever it might be is still there. So that's kind of more your inner circle, and that's going to have fewer people. That'll have your 1 to 2 best friends. It might have your sister or another family member. And then as you move on to those more outer layers of the circles, those are the people that maybe you go to the workout class with every week, or someone that you see every other month. Now, of course, like I mentioned, I'm in this stage of life where now I'm no longer in college, but I'm in this kind of transitionary period where, I'm not married, I'm not having a family or anything like that. I'm just kind of in this in between state. And a lot of my friends are in this state as well. This is usually where you're focusing on like building new relationships with a significant other or really getting into your career. And because of this, that might also be where you notice how some of your relationships might change. Because now that you and your friendships aren't necessarily at this one stop, we're all in college and we're all just now starting our jobs. Now people kind of start to venture off into different parts of their life. Some people may already be getting married, some people may be on to their first or second kid. And you can be in a completely different stage of your life. And that's typically when those relationships do change a bit. And that's not something that is bad per se, but it is just a part of the natural flow of life. What matters to you in friendships will also change. You might have prioritized the friend who, went to that spin class with you every week and then will go and grab a coffee with you. But then as you start to change, maybe the friend that you can just spend time with, relaxing on the couch and watching a movie, that friendship might become more important. So what I learned in 2025, again, is that these relationships evolve and that it is a totally normal process. And as we continue to go through different phases of our life, and our friends and our significant others and our loved ones, they are also having their own life. So they may be at a different pace or spot in their life than you are, and that might mean the relationship changes for a bit. It doesn't necessarily mean that that relationship has to end and be over, but it just might look a little different for some time. The second lesson that I learned in 2025 is that shadow work is crucial. It is so important to do shadow work. I have maybe sprinkled on this in some past episodes, but I did do some shadow work in June and worked through that for most of the summer. And it was a really life-changing experience. Not in the way that I had a major breakdown or a major download or anything like that, but it really allowed me to shed some of these layers that I've built onto myself, shed some of these things that have become part of my personality, or so I thought, right? That were really just pieces of my ego coming through. So while I didn't have anything groundbreaking happen, it did allow me to start seeing little things that I do and seeing my triggers clearly and objectively, which in return has made me feel a lot more emotionally balanced, as in I'm not letting things upset me as more. So that was one of the major lessons. You can't release your triggers without shadow work, because your triggers, the things that either make you get really anxious or upset or sad, there are things tied to that. And while maybe whatever situation you're in where you're facing a trigger, it might be obvious, oh, well, she said that to me and that hurt my feelings. But you have to look at the shadow work in the sense of, why did that hurt your feelings? Because typically there's something that happened early on in your childhood or adolescence that made this shadow come up. And now all the things that you're facing in adulthood are a result of that event that happened. So it's part of the shadow. So being able to tie back certain things to something that happened to me as a kid or as a teenager, that when I look at it on paper, it really didn't seem like that big of a deal. But the fact that while I was working through this shadow work, it came up, that showed a lot to me. And I really do think in the next year, I am going to do for our next season an episode on shadow work, just so people who are feeling ready to tap into it or want more information about it can look into that. But on a bigger scale, I learned through this shadow work that emotions are there to tell you something, not to be a burden. I can't tell you how many times in therapy I've said something that I'm feeling or something that happened, and I'll follow it up with, it just annoyed me. Or I'll be telling a story to my friend and I'll be like, I'm so annoyed. I use that word annoyed a lot. And annoyed, honestly, isn't a really good adjective, I feel like, to describe my feelings. But I have noticed that it is because I'm feeling a certain type of emotion. I don't want to feel it because I'm labeling it as negative. And so therefore I'm saying I'm annoyed by it because it's a burden to me. And now, instead of being like, oh my gosh, I'm anxious, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm jealous, whatever the negative, you might say, emotion might be, the unwanted emotion, instead of looking at it as something that is a burden and something I need to get rid of right away, I immediately now stop and ask myself, why am I feeling this way? And I, try to link it back to one of my shadows. Shadow work is also really important to do because your self-love will only increase. I'm typically a little bit harsh on myself. While I love to be really confident and just make jokes or whatever, I do have moments where I'm harder on myself than other people are. And we talked about this in the Quest for Confidence episode. But when you do shadow work, you realize that these emotions and these triggers that you look at as these negative parts of you, because that's what the shadow is. They're parts of you that you have shunned and deemed unacceptable. They are always there, but until you address them, they do not go away until you shine the light on them. So instead of now looking at these feelings I have as bad things, I realize that it's just a part of a shadow, and it's a part of a situation that might have impacted me when I was younger, when I didn't know better. And it just makes me have more patience, more love, and appreciation for myself, for one, being able to even just take this big leap and recognize my shadows and work through them, because that's something that you should be proud of if you have done shadow work or are planning on doing it. But it also humanizes you. It reminds you that you are just a human, and you're not expected to be a perfect robot, that you have your flaws and you have your imperfections, but they are just human parts of you. So shadow work, really crucial. I'm so glad I did it in 2025. The third lesson from this year was that being spiritual out loud is fun and it's okay to do. I realized that, well, you could say I started being more spiritual out loud last year when I started this podcast, right? Because I put it up on my social media. I'm putting my voice out there with my spirituality. However, still, when it came to my personal Instagram and before like my TikTok, it wasn't really something that I did a lot. I wasn't really speaking about my spirituality or posting my tarot pools or my oracle cards, things like that. I wasn't doing it as much out loud. One, because I was afraid of the possible judgment. So just judgment, right, from people in my life or the people in my community who see me and don't get it, or are like, oh, she wasn't like this like 6 years ago or whatever it might be. And two, I didn't want other people in the spiritual community to see what my personal practices are and tell me that like I'm doing something wrong. That really allowed me to pause by just putting myself out there. It allowed me to pause and remember that your spiritual practices are unique to you and they will evolve. They're not always going to look the same. I started off this year so strong with my meditation. I was meditating for 10 minutes to start every day up until about June. Then I moved on to 15 minutes. And for a good amount of time, I can't tell you how long, I was like so consistent with that. I've talked on this podcast so many times about how I'm not the best with meditation and how it's really been a practice I wanted to grow into. But once I developed that habit, after those first 30 days, it came really easily to me. Now we're approaching the end of the year here, and that has changed a little bit for me. Now I don't make myself meditate for a certain amount of time. I'm typically doing now more guided meditation than just meditation with having like sound frequencies on in the background. So I do it for whatever length. I don't set a specific time of day to do it. Maybe it's in the morning, maybe it's in the middle of my day, maybe it's before bed. It really doesn't matter. And I also don't beat myself up if I didn't meditate one day. Another example is my tarot deck. I've had that for like 2 years now, and I really haven't been pulling tarot cards and writing down my pulls and my spreads until like midway this year. So the point of this is that it is okay for your practices to change, and that's totally normal because they're changing along with you. Being spiritual out loud has also helped me find my community within this space, which I think is amazing. It started off with me having like 2-3 friends who were spiritual, and then they introduced me to their community, and now there's so many people in this space in Phoenix that I feel connected to. And it's been really fun because I'll get to do things like cord cutting ceremonies. I'll do full moon rituals with other people. We'll do intention setting. And now at the end of this year, I'm going to be going on a retreat with some people from this community. And it's really fun because we're just going to do, a bunch of fun woo-woo stuff. And that has also made it really easy to just allow myself to express my practices freely because I know that there's other people in my community who are supporting me. Really, all that matters is what you think and that you're having fun doing it, but it helps knowing that you have community alongside you. Being spiritual out loud has also made me way more in touch with my claircognizance, my clairaudience, my clairvoyance. I've been having more signs pop up everywhere. It's really literally to the point now where I don't even I'm not even surprised when a sign pops up. I just smile at the silliness of it. Literally yesterday, this is totally random, but I was at my boyfriend's house and he was listening to some song, and then the song ended. I go on Instagram and my friend posted a story and it had that same exact song, but I had never heard of the song before, and while he was playing it, I looked on his phone to see oh, what song is this, and then it showed up on her Instagram story literally 30 seconds later, and it's just some random not popular song, and he thought that was funny, and I was oh my gosh, look at what just happened, and he of course was oh, what do you think this means? And while I do still look into signs sometimes to see what it means, sometimes if it's just random stuff like that, I take it as a message from the universe that I'm still tuned in, that my guides are still with me, that I'm just still present and connected. So being spiritual out loud has also really allowed these signs to continue to pop up, and just to help me feel more connected in general. Which, this brings me to the fourth lesson from this year, which is your intuition is always speaking to you. At the beginning of this year, I made my word for the year to be trust. 2024, it was align, and I really feel like I've been living my aligned life that I should be this year, so that's been great. But trust was really my focus, especially because at the end of 2024, I was in this situation where my gut, my intuition was telling me that this was not the right situation for me to be in, and I ignored it until, lo and behold, as the universe usually does, it removed that thing from my life because I wasn't listening and I wasn't doing it. So because of that, really ending the year with a bang there, I knew that I wanted trust to be my word for 2025. And while I definitely have moments where I'm not perfect and I still have that doubt and I still kind of let the ego and anxiety maybe take over for a little bit, I am always coming back to my intuition, and I don't need a reason anymore. I don't need to make anything logic like I usually do because I'm logic brained, and that's hard to do sometimes. It's hard to trust your intuition when you're so driven by logic most times. But this year, I really feel like I've been able to learn the importance of that. Big or small, the situation, it doesn't matter the size, your intuition is always speaking to you. You can tap into your intuition from deciding what you want to eat for dinner, something as small as that. It doesn't have to be, oh, I need to check in with my intuition to make this big decision. Trying to tap into it on the little things every day will make it so much easier to hear what it is that you should do, to hear your gut, to have your third eye open when it comes to the big stuff. And trust becomes easy when you know that you can count on yourself. Allowing yourself to truly believe that at the end of the day, I got me, the universe got me. No matter what I choose here, I'm going to tap into what my intuition is saying, even if it might be a little scary, even if I'm nervous that it's not the right choice, but I know that I got me. The more that you allow yourself to lean into that instead of second guessing, the easier it will be to trust, and the more open your third eye is going to become. And it just honestly makes things so much more fun. It makes things simpler. You lead with less anxiety, because that really was the issue for me, is that things were making me anxious and I was not listening to my intuition. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. The next lesson that I learned this year is to remember and focus on what really matters. And this really showed up for me in terms of family. I've really been learning not to take not only my own health, but the people in your life, their health for granted. Life is short. Life is unpredictable. You hear people say that all the time, but you really don't think about that, honestly. You don't until it happens to someone that you care about. So I've really been reminded of that this year. And also through reuniting with my family in Italy in May, that really was a reminder of how important family is to me. And, I need to focus on what matters because I got to reconnect with them. Family members that I haven't seen in 10 years, but I grew up with, seeing them every year. I've always been really close to that side, my mom's side of the family over there. And that was just a wonderful experience where I remember going into it, I was so nervous that things would be awkward, especially with my childhood family friends there. And it wasn't like that at all. A reminder that those are the things that matter, and all of this other stuff that we deal with that we're worried about, like, it's all secondary. And last but not least, another lesson that I learned this year was that stepping out of your comfort zone can be fun. When you're type A or you're a routine type of person, going out of your comfort zone, your immediate thought is anxiety. Really ties into the control episode I just did last month. Going out of the comfort zone typically is a lack of control, which usually results in me not wanting to do it right. But I really got out of my comfort zone this year doing a multitude of things. For one, solo dates. I've always been the type, to go to a coffee shop, read, work on stuff for the pod or whatever it might be on my own. I go run my errands by myself, but a true solo date was not something that I've done. I've never gone to a retreat by myself. Usually that's something that I would need someone else to go with me in order to feel safe. I've never eaten out at a restaurant by myself until this year, like a full-on 6 p.m. weekday full restaurant meal. I had never hiked by myself, and I had never planned like an entire day of things to do and just for me and with me alone. And that has really been fun, honestly. And it was fun documenting it and just seeing how that worked out for me and how it actually wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be. Because what I learned from talking to my friends after that is that a lot of my friends already are doing stuff like that. Like, I have a friend who goes to concerts by herself. That's going to be my next goal. It's not as scary. It can be fun. In terms of dating, I've tried new things there. I've done activities that I wouldn't have normally done, talked to people that in the past I don't think I would have talked to. This goes with the evolvement, right? You're always changing. So just because you're used to one thing and that's how it's always been doesn't mean that that's the right thing, because these little micro shifts that we have within ourselves, sometimes we don't even notice them. So then we miss out on opportunities that might align with us at this point in our life. So that has also been really fun to do this year. And just taking risks in general. Allowing myself to say the thing to my boss that I was nervous to say, to ask the questions that I feel silly asking, to try the new thing that I've been wanting to try but was always scared to do. This really has been the year where I have allowed myself to step out of that, especially because one of the manifestations that I really worked on this year will involve me, like stepping out of my comfort zone in order for that manifestation to actually end up being something that's good for me. So that has been really helpful in pushing me to do these things, is knowing that my highest version, my next plan, my next spot, whatever it is, that this is something that version of me would do. So now I'm trying to incorporate that into my current life. Of course, there have been so many more lessons and good and not so good things that have happened along 2025, but overall, personally, this year wasn't that bad for me. I know for some people they were like, oh my gosh, 2025 sucks, and we're all at different points in our lives, right? This year was the year of the snake, so it was all about shedding the things that no longer serve you, preparing for a new beginning, a new you. So that might have really been the energy you tapped into this year. Maybe it was easy to shed that snake skin, maybe it was a little hard, but either way, you did it, you made it here, and things are looking up for 2026. I'll be continuing on with our normal schedule for the new year, so we'll have a new episode in January, just like every month. And I want to give the time just to thank you for listening, and I hope the end of this year brings you what you've been looking for. If you like this episode, be sure to give it a review and share it with someone in your life. You never know who might resonate with it. Chat with you later.